For most of us, an economic collapse feels like the end of the world, right? A total disaster. But what if I told you that for a select few, it's something else entirely? A moment of, well, immense opportunity. So let's explore how that's even possible.
And that right there is the central question we're going to dig into. What if history isn't just a bunch of random, chaotic accidents? What if it's a repeating cycle, a pattern that, if you know how to read it, actually reveals a blueprint for not just surviving, but thriving when everything seems to be falling apart?
Now let me be super clear. This isn't about some shadowy conspiracy theory. Not at all. It's actually a really well-documented historical pattern. It's a massive transfer of wealth. While most people are caught completely off guard, a small, prepared group uses that chaos to scoop up assets at rock-bottom, fire-sale prices.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at crisis as an opportunity. Then, a quick lesson from history. We'll touch on the paper money illusion and the too-big-to-fail trap. And finally, we'll put all the pieces together and reveal the 1% survival blueprint.
All right, Section 1, Crisis as an Opportunity. So let's start with the big idea here. In pretty much every major downturn, there's this process that goes on. Some people call it stealth redistribution. And it's exactly what it sounds like. A massive transfer of wealth that happens, well, right under our noses.
So think about it like this. Every major crisis is a transfer. It's a transfer from the many people who trust the system to the very few who prepare for it to be fragile. If you're holding what are basically paper promises, cash, stocks, bonds, when the trust that holds that whole system together just poof evaporates, you become the liquidity. Your panic selling is what allows those who prepared to swoop in and buy up real tangible stuff for pennies on the dollar.
Okay, let's get into our first lesson from history, the Black Death. And to really see how this plays out in the real world, we've got to look at maybe the most brutal, the most intense economic reset in all of human history. Because the Black Death, man, it wasn't just a health crisis. It completely rewired the economy of an entire continent.
I mean, look at this number, 50%. Just let that sink in for a second. Half of the entire population of Europe just vanished. The economic shock was, it's almost unimaginable. It was total chaos, it was tragedy, and yet, for a select few, it was a once-in-a-millennium opportunity.
And really, two completely different paths emerged from all that chaos. On one side, you had the majority, the people without reserves. For them, it was just ruin. They lost everything. But on the other side, you had the few who had held on to things like silver or goods, real assets. For them, it was the ultimate buyer's market. Suddenly, labor was super scarce, land was dirt cheap, and they could literally leverage that tragedy to climb the social and economic ladder.
And this brings us to the very first rule of the blueprint. It's simple, but it's absolutely crucial. Crises reward those with reserves, and they punish those without them. And you know what? We don't even have to look back to the 14th century to see this in action. Just think about the 2020 COVID pandemic. All that massive government stimulus, it sent asset prices through the roof, creating a huge windfall for the wealthy while so many other people were just trying to get by.
All right, next up, the paper money illusion, with lessons from ancient Rome. This gets to our second big principle, and it's all about understanding what money really is. See, the wealthy have always understood a simple truth that a lot of us forget. Money isn't some rock-solid thing. It's a belief system. And belief systems, well, they can shatter.
Take the Roman denarius. As Rome's bills got bigger and bigger, the emperors did something sneaky. They just started reducing the amount of actual silver in their coins. It's basically the ancient version of printing money. And look what happened over time. In 100 AD, a coin was 95% silver. By 270 AD, it was down to 5%. And by 300 AD, less than 1%. A coin that was once nearly pure silver became pretty much worthless.
This whole process, it has a name, stealth inflation. And it's basically a way for a state to pay its bills by quietly stealing the purchasing power from its own citizens in slow motion. It's a secret tax on your savings. Think about it. You have $100 saved up. With just 5% inflation, a year from now, that same $100 only buys what $95 buys today. The number on the bill hasn't changed, but what it can get you, that's changed.
So, how did the Roman elites get around this? How do they survive? Simple. They didn't hold on to the currency. They held real assets. Things the government couldn't just create out of thin air. We're talking land, productive businesses, resources. Things that have real intrinsic value, no matter what the latest coin is worth.
Okay, that brings us to our third big lesson, what I like to call the too big to fail trap. We're going to look at Florence and then fast forward to 2008. And this is all about trust, or more specifically, the danger of putting way too much faith in big institutions that seem absolutely invincible.
Back in the 1340s, Florence was basically the financial capital of the world. It was the Wall Street of its day, and you had these two banking families, the Bardi and the Peruzzi, who ran these massive empires. I mean, they were the titans of their era. They seemed completely untouchable, the very definition of too big to fail.
And then, the King of England defaulted on his war loans. And just like that, in one single act, the whole illusion just shattered. When their biggest client failed to pay, these supposedly mighty banks collapsed like dominoes, and they took the savings of countless ordinary citizens right down with them. The lesson here is pretty stark. An institution's promises are only good until the day they're not.
And doesn't this sound familiar? It's basically the exact same model we saw on full display in 2008. The system is set up to privatize the gains and socialize the losses. What does that mean? Well, when things are going great, the banks get to keep all the profits. But when they mess up and the whole thing collapses, guess who foots the bill? The taxpayers. We pay for the bailouts, while ordinary people are the ones who face the real consequences, like foreclosures and lost pension.
So now we get to the big reveal, the 1% survival blueprint. Look, these events we've talked about, the Black Death, Rome, Florence, 2008, they might be separated by centuries, but they're not just random stories. They're data points. And they all point to the same consistent principles. Have reserves, hold real assets, and don't blindly trust the system. So now let's put it all together. Let's reveal the blueprint itself.
Okay, here it is. It really boils down to 3 core actions. Number 1, liquidity for leverage. This just means having cash or reserves on hand, patient capital, so you're ready to buy up valuable stuff when everyone else is forced to sell in a panic. Number 2, productive resilience. Now, this isn't just about owning gold bars. It's about owning things that actually create value, things that move, feed, or build. Production is always valuable. And finally, number 3, avoid the debt discipline. You know, in the end, this is really what it all comes down to. Economic systems don't collapse just because the numbers stop adding up on a spreadsheet. They collapse because the people inside of them stop trusting each other. It's a system built on human trust, and when that trust breaks, the whole thing can come tumbling down.
And that's the real takeaway here. History doesn't repeat itself. Not exactly. But if you don't understand it, it'll crush you all the same. These aren't just old stories. They're warnings. They're lessons. Because while the names and the dates might change, the fundamental dynamics of crisis, wealth, and power, those are timeless.